A lot of stuff centered around ITIL and processes like Six Sigma. Being government oriented, that's the kind of things we do. Sandoval County is a pretty unique place. It's over 3,000 square miles. In that 3,000 square miles, 5 miles of that is water, which is not a whole lot. We have 12 Indian pueblos, Indian reservations. There's only one other county in the country, and that's in California, that has any more Indian population than we do. We've got a lot of national forest, a lot of national monuments within our county. And so we have a lot of unique things. We are also flanked by 2 of the top national laboratories. And we also happen to be the main route for a lot of nuclear waste that goes through our county. So again, a lot of uniqueness. We also house the Nuclear, Biological, Chemical Warfare Protected Group called HAWK, and it's one of about 6 of those groups, and that's also within our county. So if things go wrong, they could go wrong really bad, and they usually do. Again, we're fairly large. We've got over 70 buildings throughout the county. We also are in charge of sheriff and fire departments throughout the county. And like I said before, 12 tribal governments that we have to deal with. So in any given moment, I've always got a fire that we've got to put out. We've always got problems, and we have to keep on it, or just like all of you guys, you don't keep on it, it's a mess. Again, this is kind of know what's broke before your customers do, and I've given this talk before, but a couple of unique things happened this year that kind of threw a loop for me, and I wanted to present that. And that is, when I first started working for Sandoval County about 2 years ago, our fire chief looked at me and said, "Don't worry about any emergency we have. We've never opened up our emergency operations center in the 15 years I've been here. This year we've opened it up twice. We've got a typical network across our system, just like any other network that's out there. It's fairly complex, but it's nothing major. I mean, we basically have to deal with databases and email servers and all that good stuff, so it's nothing surprising, nothing that you haven't seen before. But what's really surprising, or what's really different, at least as far as my career was concerned, was the emergency communications aspect of my job. And at one point, most radio systems that were out there, cars, the sheriff's cars that had radios, or fire department that had radios, they're traditional radios. They were analog systems. In the last 5 to 10 years, those radios have turned IP-based, and a lot of trunked systems. Sheriff's cars getting a lot of data downloaded into their cars. So we've been able to utilize that type of system, and we monitor it now. And now for something completely different. The emergency operations centers had to be evacuated for 2 reasons this year. One was a serious cold outbreak. We had negative 45-degree temperatures. Now in Minnesota, that's not a big deal. But in the desert Southwest, it's a huge deal. And because of that, we lost natural gas pressure. We ran out. Again, we have 12 Indian pueblos. They're very poor. We had to open up major shelter centers. It was a complete mess. The biggest mess is once we had everybody's gas turned off, getting it turned back on turned to be a bigger issue than the gas going off in itself. We had to utilize the National Guard. We're flanked also by Kirtland Air Force Base, so we had to bring in the Air Force to help us. It was a logistics nightmare, and we failed miserably. It was bad. I'm pretty sure some people aren't going to get elected in 2012 because of the fiasco that the gas system turned out to be. But it actually ended up being a godsend, because 6 months later we had the largest fire in New Mexico history in our county. It's still burning. It's probably going to burn for at least another 6 months, is what they're telling me. It's controlled, but it's a big fire. It's well over 150,000 acres and growing. Nagios played a huge role in helping us control what we needed to do. and I'll explain a little bit of that. That's with the gas outage, but what I really want to talk about is the fire. I woke up to my phone ringing in the morning. It was my fire chief saying, "Hey, can we borrow a couple of your guys? We're gonna have to run out to the fire." And at that point, it didn't seem to be a big deal, and we loaded up our mobile command system. We actually have a van that's got all of our communications equipment in it, and we rolled on out to the fire. These are pictures taken from my backyard. The first picture was when I was on the phone with the fire chief and him telling me that we've got a fire. And the second picture is 20 minutes later. That's not the picture, that's not from my backyard, that's from the space station. But within 20 minutes, that fire grew from about 10 acres to about 500 acres. And that's when we lost the first 20 houses. The bad thing about that is 2 of the houses we lost were our district fire chief, one of our battalion commanders. It was quite bad. What we did that was interesting, though, and this is where Nagios comes into play, is, of course, we have an emergency operations center. And that emergency operations center has the typical monitoring system. You've got big screens on the TV, and we monitor our network. But what we noticed was that because of this fast-moving fire, we lost a fire station, which is kind of ironic, but we lost a fire station. When we lost that fire station, of course, we noticed on Nagios that it was red, it's gone. We then got a really great idea by the fire trucks, the fire chief, the sheriffs that were out in the field. They were VPNing into our network, and of course grabbing an IP address when they did. I have a really great technician that can type faster than anything I've ever seen, and he was actually grabbing those IP addresses and creating nodes, and we could see them in real time. We actually lost a fire truck and 2 sheriff's cars, and we could see those also disappear on our monitoring system. And I would have never thought in a million years that we were going to be monitoring emergency communication vehicles on our Nagios screen. It was very unique, very disheartening, because at the time we didn't know if people were in those cars or not. It was a fast-moving situation. We didn't even have the Forestry Service on hand. And another interesting thing that we have to note about Sandoval County is, because of the size of Sandoval County, most of our fire departments are volunteers. We have 18 paid staff, but over 256 volunteers. And each of those volunteers are issued a radio that are now IP-based radio. And since we were seeing that we could do this with the cars, we started doing that with the radios. And we started populating the radios on our Nagios monitoring screens. And we could see in real time who was available, who wasn't available. And because of that, we're starting to write scripts so we can do that in real time. In other words, when somebody VPs in, we can do a script that immediately populates our Nagios monitoring screens with those systems. And in some cases, this is really a really detailed know what's broke before your customers do, because our customers were those firemen, were those sheriffs, and it was very important that we keep them we keep that knowledge really fresh on our system, especially in a fast-moving system like that. The best way to describe what we're trying to do in the county with Nagios and other products as well is to maintain just an almost real-time, at all times status of where we're at in any given time, especially in an emergency situation. We've always just used these products in a traditional monitoring sense, but now we've noticed that we can actually do much more with them. We are starting to, of course, buy the products that allow us to create all these environmental conditions. We have a lot of microwave communications because of just where we're located. The way that we get communications to some of our really far-flung communities is in Bernalillo County.